Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 9th June 2021. In this video, we'll be discussing two issues. These are very important from both governance as well as ethics perspective. The proportionality principle. We are talking about an article written by an Israeli diplomat, and we are looking at this from the context of GS2 international relations, that is the Israel-Palestine conflict, and again from GS4 international ethics. Before getting into the specifics of this article, let me give a brief background. Ever since 1947, Israel has been a land of conflict. The reason for this is because Jews and Arabs. Basically, the conflict here is access to land. Jews consider this land as the birthplace of their religion, that is Judaism, much before Christ, and it is important even for Christians because of the fact that this is the birthplace of Jesus Christ. At the same time, for Islam, this is the home for some of the most holiest sites after Makkah, and for that reason they consider this land even more important because it has a cultural continuity and a lot of significance. After the World War I, Israel-Palestine conflict, Israel represented Jews and Arabs are actually represented through the state of Palestine. There was a one-sided dominance exhibited by Israel in what is called as the 1967 war, and in this Israel occupied and has shown aggression towards Arabs. So Arab through Palestine sought support from other neighboring Arab states like Egypt, etc., but Israel managed to completely dominate the scene, and ever since 1967, through a series of events to the present day, this conflict has remained as such. Now, in this entire scenario, you have to understand that the present war is with an organization called Hamas, which is representing the Palestine. So, you don't have to go into the history of Israel-Palestine, that is beyond the scope of this video, but the point that we are trying to understand here is in international politics, we have certain ethical obligations, and that is why international ethics is also a component of our syllabus. In that, there are basically three broad schools which try to project the views held by the state in conducting their international relations. The first school is called realist school. In this, there are more moral obligations. The only obligation that a foreign policy should take into consideration for the interest of the state is self-interest. Unless and until a policy action serves the interests of the nation in question, they should not do it. The other one is the liberal thinking. So in this, it is also called ideal thinking or idealism. In this, it upholds certain values and principles. So if you take the case of India in the context of the Panchsheel, where 5 principles were actually espoused, and we have certain principles like no first use doctrine with respect to our nuclear power, and all those come under idealistic framework of international politics and foreign policy. The other one is the realist, but a principle realist. So in the present scheme of things, India, according to certain foreign policy experts in policy circles, India has taken this principle realist turn, not idealist, principle realist turn, where we definitely uphold certain principles, but we also take certain interests into account. An example for this is the Israel-Palestine conflict. Let me explain how. Generally, ever since 1947, India said that occupation or territorial aggression is a principle that is expounded by imperialistic forces, and therefore Israel should actually consider the issues of Palestine, and there should be a dialogue between these two partners according to the foreign policy held by India. So we actually supported in 1994 what was called as the two-state solution. This two-state solution was proposed after a truce was reached between Palestine and Israel. However, it was never implemented because certain sections of the Palestine did not accept this, and even Israel has not taken an action on this. However, after 2014, we see a realistic turn in our foreign policy conduct because we have to partner with Israel given the technological prowess it has. So in this context, we followed something called dehyphenation. Dehyphenation is actually an international principle where whenever we conduct our international relations with two warring factions, in this case one is with Israel, the other one is with Palestine. So as per this dehyphenation policy, we will neither support Israel nor conduct our relations with Palestine through the lens of this two-state solution. What would rather do is use the bilateral relations with Israel for our own benefits. This is the realistic turn we have. So a lot of people have actually complained that India is losing its soft power diplomacy in a bid to gain technological prowess, because soft power diplomacy was all we had. However, it is also important to remember that we have to safeguard our own interest as well. Israel is a great partner for agricultural development of our future. Desalination techniques, etc., are also very important because Israel, despite being a deserted state, pioneered this desalination technique and improved agricultural productivity. We can learn from them. So therefore, it is important to follow this dehyphenation policy. At the same time, in order to understand this realistic turn, the major criticism across the world, even now in this Israel-Hamas war, Israel is actually criticized for this realistic stance on foreign policy by blatantly attacking the Palestinian citizens. Now, here is where the argument is very important, because we also have to hear the Israeli side of the argument, and depending on this argument, we can sometimes solve ethical dilemmas. Ethical dilemmas is a very important aspect of our syllabus in GS4. Therefore, we are trying to understand this proportionality principle. Now, what is this proportionality principle? Generally, the logical reasoning in the context of law, also called as jurisprudence. So this jurisprudence is the whole difference in the ethics paper. How logically you would put out your point is the central issue that we have to address. Now, in this proportionality principle, the author advocates that what proportionality principle means is, if a state takes out an attack, say for example, if Israel decides to attack on Palestine, then it has to take certain principles. It should not attack citizens but only the warring factions. This is the fact. Now, the major criticism against Israel is that it is attacking even the citizens. The justification or the explanation given by the Israel side is this article. Now, what is this proportionality principle? Normally, proportionality principle means that every military strike, in the context of military, it should probably assess two factors. What is that? What is the target? How do you decide your target? In a military war, obviously the country should pick up military targets, not civilian targets, right? That is the ethics of war. Secondly, what is the impact if the country actually succeeds in overcoming its target? The impact is winning the strategy or winning the strategic battle. Last week, there was a war between Israel and Hamas was actually firing missiles onto Israel. At the same time, Israel attacked the Palestinian side, and it has taken down a building which is right in the center of the city, which probably might have killed even civilians. So the justification given by the Israeli side is that the group in contention, the Hamas, which is the Palestinian organization, is actually placing its operations within the city, completely aware of the fact that if Israel conducts a strike, it will kill the civilians. So, using this strategy, they have been attacking Israel. Now, whenever there is an armed conflict, it is natural for any country to retaliate and defend. So, that is exactly what Israel had been doing. Now, Gaza civilians, or a part of the Gaza Strip, which is in the northeastern part of Israel's map, if you take a look at the map, this organization is actually using those citizens as a immunity from the attacks, and they are using this pictures of violence as atrocities committed by Israel against human rights. Now, the same logic will apply if Israel does not defend the attacks from Hamas side or the Palestinian side. It would cause the same amount of destruction that it would impart even on Israelis as well. So the author says that Israel is just defending its own citizens and in no way wants to harm the people in Palestine. So this is the explanation given. The takeaway is the argumentation whenever we want to solve an ethical dilemma. In the case of international ethics, we have this principles like proportionality principle, but when you are solving questions related to ethics in Indian context, you can always use constitutional principles. So that is the gist of this article. Building trust in governance. Again, this article is a very important one. Basically, in governance, we have to look at enhancing two kinds of capital. One is the social capital, and the other one is the human capital. Now, it is important to understand the definitions of each of this term and how they are interlinked. So, whenever we think about capital, normal reaction would be to think of money in terms of economy. But if you take a look at the factors of production, land, labor, capital, this is just one of the capital. Now, in order to relook at the other aspects, land and labor, especially of the labor aspect, international circles, especially the international multilateral organizations, developmental agencies, they rephrase the term labor resources as labor capital. Now, labor capital will have two aspects, the social aspect and the human aspect. Governments are expected to build both these because they in turn contribute towards growth and development. Now, what constitutes this human capital? It is nothing but investments in health, education, etc. What is social capital? Basically, it is the amount of trust that a citizen has in institutions of our democracy. This author takes the example of certain innovations which have built upon this trust. After demonetization, we are witnessing a trend of rise in digital transactions. This digital transactions increased because of cyber security or the element of trust and convenience that these apps have brought in, and this increased with the entry of UPI, which has been the motivating force for increase in this digital transactions. Similarly, if you take a look at even the private sector, there is an incentive for these private companies like Uber, Ola to build simple yet very effective security mechanisms that built this trust. If there is no trust in the business, obviously those businesses would fall apart in the long run. So in the phase of this new age where e-governance is expected to take a new turn by ensuring public private partnerships are built for service delivery, this article talks about enhancing the trust. So accountability and transparency, these words are often heard in our governance syllabus. One of the most important mechanism is RTI. But the problem with RTI is it is very cumbersome for normal citizen to file for an RTI application. Rather, if we create systems which build trust, it would ensure the outcomes are multifold. So if you take a look at the success of UPI, it has given certain advantages, or it gave encouragement for the government sector to consider new innovations. And for this, we can even take civil society bodies help. This article is actually written by a civil society body, e-governance foundation, and he is the CEO of this e-governance foundation, the writer. So he talks about the importance of public private partnership and civil society in creating the new frameworks for e-governance. If e-governance can build this trust in service delivery, we will be in a position to enhance or augment the service delivery aspect. That is the gist of this article.